So you are the composer for the musical element of Bella Gaia. Can you talk a little bit about your compositional process, and can you share how the nexus of art and science inspires your overarching vision of this concert experience?
Yeah, I guess my compositional process, I came from, uh, well, I started composing music when I was 5. It was this song to President Reagan. But, in terms of like doing more complex, multi-layered stuff, I was doing that in high school, and I was in many different bands, you know, not just doing classical violin, but I was in rock bands. I was in a lot of reggae bands, actually. I have a lot of reggae and dub influence. I used to have dreadlocks. And then electronica. I think that was a huge impact for me in my career, in both ambient music but also dance music. I ran my own dance label for many years. I performed. That's sort of how my music career took off, was in Japan, making dance music, but also mixing live violin with the dance music, but performing it at clubs and raves and things like that in Japan. And that's sort of how I started doing this full time, actually. So I very much have this electronica and dub background in the way that I approach rhythm and bass, but I have this very solid classical background too. And so I think, like, listening to my music, although it has electronica elements, if you listen carefully, I think there are motifs that you find in classical music and sort of structure that you find in classical music that is beyond just the regular compositional style you hear in dance or ambient music. And I really like telling stories through music. A lot of people tell me that my music is very evocative, very visual, actually. And that might have come from also my first experiences with composition was in film school, making scores for films. Mm-hmm. So soundtrack for film is sort of where I really developed my compositional skills. And I think that you very much hear it in Bella Gaia. But it's whether I do the music first and then edit the video to that, or whether I create the video and then compose to that, it's actually both. It depends on the section or the content or the story that I'm trying to tell. And then recently I have also been playing more of a producer role and working with other composers, which I find also very exciting, because it can really just diversify my expression while still guiding it through kind of storytelling process. So yeah, I think my music is very much of a storytelling type of experience, and in terms of how it, the nexus of art and science, it really kind of created itself, in many ways. The way that I got traction at NASA was presenting just a 5-minute clip of their visualizations created by the scientists who were sitting in this room at NASA Goddard, the top, Earth scientists in the world. And they were just sitting there looking at, my presentation, and I just did a 5-minute example in their auditorium with my violin and their visualizations with this music. And they came up to me afterwards. They're like, "Oh my goodness, this is like, I thought I was looking at a different piece of media, even though they created it themselves." Mm-hmm. And so, and plus it was a room full of frustrated scientists, frustrated that they are unable to get traction with the public, mm-hmm. with all of the amazing research and data that they present and all the press releases that they send out, that they're not getting traction. And so we're all familiar with this story, and I think, and what I was basically showing them was that, look, you have to communicate science in a way that humans understand, which is beyond just left brain. It has to really actually start with the right brain and engage people emotionally, and then go into deeper cognitive left brain science. And science has, I mean, apart from the lovers of science, science has a stigma of being dry or boring. And all this climate change stuff has been so politicized and so fear-based, not to the scientists' fault, but that's kind of what it has ended up happening. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to get back down to more personal ways of communicating this. How do you personalize something so abstract and so complex and interconnected? We have to make that meaningful to people today, like in your life, and your family and the people that you love around you. And that's what Bella Gaia has been able to do. And I'm not just saying this, we have real NASA survey data that shows this, which I think nobody else can claim. We have 4-year NASA survey data proving we more than double the amount of people who gain a more personal relationship with the planet and around topics like climate change, in that they understand its importance to their personal life today. So I think, the takeaway from this is that art has a very necessary and very needed role in communicating science. And I think we're starting to see a lot more of it with terms like STEAM rather than STEM. Whatever you want to call it, I think there just has to be more collaboration between scientists and artists. To me, as an artist, it brings much more depth and a foundation of reality, rather than just pretty pictures like I talked about earlier. I think that art has to really enter a new phase of having more meaning in this world. I'm often very critical of modern art in that it's just, it's a reflection of the sort of over-commodification, the sort of meaningless time that we live in, where we're completely disconnected to the planet and the biosphere that keeps us alive. And that, art and artists and creative people need to think more holistically and bring more meaning into art. Otherwise, it's just, visual masturbation. And we don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
Maybe we did before, but we don't have now.
Yeah. Actually, that's something that I've thought so much about. Why is it that if you go to a concert today and there's new music on the program, there's always program notes that you read contextualizing the piece that you hear? If we were living back in the 1800s, the people that were attending that concert all had a relatively similar background and education pertaining to music and styles and
right.
etc. So you attend a concert and collectively you understand what that music is saying, especially when it was pushing the boundaries of normal form and style. So those changes and those expansions were very meaningful to the audiences. But today I struggle with, how do you present a concert without program notes or without text and get everyone to really understand what the music or the presentation is about. But what I love about Bella Gaia is we all have the planet in common. Like,
yes.
You don't have to contextualize a picture of the planet
right.
hanging in space. I think that's incredibly innovative and like old in such a way that connects us on a very personal level.
Yeah, we all can relate to the planet, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, people who do end up coming to Bella Gaia, a lot of them say, I had my reservations about this before coming, and I didn't really know what to expect. But once I've seen it, it's completely blown my mind. But just getting, that sort of negative preconception of something that is environmental or planetary is sort of sad. Yeah. I don't know whose fault that is. Maybe, artists have to make these things better, and so do environmentalists. I think people are fatigued about the cynicism and the negativity, and yeah, that's not how you can motivate people. And so now there's this whole sort of cloud over anything sort of looking like it's environmental, which is a shame. But yeah, I think Bella Gaia approaches this from a completely different angle, and it's really about celebrating the magic and the beauty, and it's easy to say, God, humans are so evil and horrible, but Bella Gaia takes an approach that actually, no, humans, we do have a role to play in this universe, and it's not just a cancerous thing that's out of control. I think we do have a very important role to play in this universe, on this planet. I think we have an obligation to our ancestors to continue striving to be our best, and to continue evolving, and to be responsible stewards of our home. And we can go into a more esoteric conversation about this, but anyway,
yeah. Again, like, one of my favorite things is how, when the first piece of data visualization shows up, like, immediately borders and boundaries are removed.
Yeah.
And everyone in that physical space feels a sense of interconnectedness amongst themselves. And I think that's an extremely effective way of presenting science and art at the same time.
Yeah, just removing borders. It's a completely new perspective.
Yeah.
And, seeing the Earth upside down, actually there is no up in space, there is no down. Why not see the Earth upside down? Yeah, it's interesting, the very simple things you can do to just change a person's perspective, and that's really powerful,
Yeah.